as the transfer don Fabrizio Romano gives us an update on the transfers Spurs are looking to make on the last day of the window. News also emerges of a Borussia Dortmund player that Tottenham agreed a deal for this week, who sadly failed a medical. Meanwhile, Jadon Sancho is in a tug of war, and Chelsea look to have fallen foul of UEFA's financial rules once again. All this and more on today's daily Premier League transfer news with me, Barnaby Slater. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in, watching and listening. Please do press that like button. Please do subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Close to 11,000 subscribers now. Really want to get over that line as soon as possible. Thank you so much for your support, and you can become a member. Only £1 a month. All the details in the description box below. I'm sure you can tell I'm not in my usual home studio, aka bedroom today. I'm back up in Scotland for the second time in a couple of months, but sadly this time for some family bleakness. But with the transfer deadline and the transfer window coming to an end tomorrow, I wanted to keep you updated with some of the stuff going on. So let's start, as ever, with my beloved Tottenham Hotspur. And yes, it is understood that this week Souleyman Coulibaly was another player. Souleyman Coulibaly was a deal that was done by Spurs, agreed with Borussia Dortmund, and personal terms agreed this week for the 20-year-old. But unfortunately, the defender failed his medical, and as a result, Tottenham have had to move on to other targets. It just goes to show what kind of players Spurs are looking for, though, doesn't it? These young, hungry players who will want to come into Spurs and grow with the squad, with the team, not come in with a big ego and expect to get straight into the first team, but really learn the system, learn how Big Ange wants you to play, learn how to defend in a Big Ange team. And unfortunately, that one didn't get over the line. But that does lead us to, as I mentioned, the transfer don, Fabrizio Romano. And he has given some thoughts on what Tottenham will try and do in these last kind of 36 hours of the transfer window. He said the following: the deal they did with Burnley for Wilson Odobert was completely silent. I think they're still working on something, and I'm told they're still working on trying to get names in, but there is still nothing concrete or close to being completed. But I can confirm Tottenham are still in the market for opportunities. Apart from Solanke, who was always the top target, all other signings they've been very good at keeping in the background. I think for Tottenham, there's still the possibility to do one or maybe two new signings. I'm not sure if it's going to be two, but it could be. I think Tottenham are going to be one for the clubs to follow in the final days. So by clubs, he also means the fans, clearly, because I know as a Spurs fan and reading all the comments from you fellow Spurs fans, you want to get another player or two through the door. But Fabrizio Romano is saying that Tottenham, and it's probably annoying for him, are being very good at just not really letting people know, not letting any leaks happen in terms of their transfer dealings. You've got to give credit to Johan Lange for that since he's come in, and Scott Munn. And maybe there can be a couple of surprises. It's certainly sure that none of us knew that Souleyman Coulibaly was on the list, and that deal nearly went through if it wasn't for a medical. So I would say possibilities for a defender who can play ideally left-sided centre-back and left-back, and then possibly a midfielder. Although all the reports I've heard are that now Spurs are so happy within the kind of coaching staff and Big Ange Postecoglou with how Archie Gray has done and how Lucas Bergvall has done, that maybe a midfielder isn't top priority anymore. But if Fabrizio Romano says that Tottenham are looking to do some more deals, then that is good enough for me. Meanwhile, going on to some outs now, and Giovanni Lo Celso is on Real Betis's radar, and we've been talking about that through a lot of the summer. But now, because Fekir is leaving Real Betis, Gio is high up their list, and I think from what I hear, a lot of let's just call it negotiating is happening. It wouldn't surprise me at all if clubs interested in Giovanni Lo Celso are trying to get Spurs to basically pay him off and rip up his contract. They'll have seen what we've done with Tanguy and Ndombele. They'll have seen what we've done with the likes of Sergio Aurier over the last few years and more. And maybe they're saying, you don't want this player. Same with Sergio Reguilon. You don't want this player. Rip up his contract, pay him off, and we'll take him. But I'm sure that Daniel Levy will be looking to get somewhere between £5 and £10 million certainly for Reguilon, maybe £10 to £13 million for Gio Lo Celso. And maybe realistically, that is what we are waiting for in terms of more incomings coming into Tottenham Hotspur before the window slams shut tomorrow night. That's Friday night. Meanwhile, Will Lancashire is set to stay with Tottenham's first team this season, despite loan interest from multiple clubs in the Championship and abroad. He's got a little bit of an injury, hasn't he, out for a couple of weeks. But I think Lancashire can be a really good option for us off the bench, particularly in those Europa League, maybe Carabao Cup games, once he gets fit again. And because we know that Richarlison is a bit injury prone, and of course Dominic Solanke got injured as soon as he came to Spurs. So I think Lancashire can learn off those two players and maybe even notch a couple of goals himself in the Europa League or the Carabao Cup. Meanwhile, mentioning the Carabao Cup, I'm sure you saw last night the draw was done. Tottenham will play Coventry away in the Carabao Cup third round. A little bit of shades of 1987 where we played Coventry in the FA Cup final and somehow lost that game 3-2. Gary Mabbott scored an own goal in that game. That was actually the first game I remember watching as a Spurs fan, 1987, so showing my age a little bit there. But Coventry away in the Carabao Cup third round, I think as long as we take that game seriously, we put out a kind of half and half team of first team players with some of those kind of younger, exciting players that we've brought in. Lucas Bergvall, Archie Gray should start, for instance. I think we should have enough to get through. And I do want us to take that Carabao Cup as seriously as possible, make sure we win those games and get deep into the tournament. Because don't forget, those teams that do win the Carabao Cup now, they love it. They take it really seriously. They properly celebrate. And I certainly would want to be one of those fans celebrating if Spurs were able to lift the Carabao Cup at Wembley at the end. Or towards the end of this season. Let's get into Loan Watch now. Ashley Phillips played the first 76 minutes for Stoke as they beat Middlesbrough 5-0 away. He had 51 touches, one in the opposition box, made 2 passes into the final third, had 1 shot and created a chance. He made 2 blocks and made 1 clearance. So, pretty good performance from Ashley Phillips there. Dane Scarlett played the first 83 minutes as Oxford lost 1-0 against the aforementioned Coventry. They had Scarlett had 1 shot on target, 13 touches and 3 in the opposition box. Jamie Donnelly came off the bench in the 81st minute as Leyton Orient beat Millwall 1-0 away. He made 1 pass into the final third, had 8 touches and made 2 clearances. Meanwhile, George Abbott has joined Notts County on loan today. He's impressed me recently, and good luck to him playing proper senior men's football. And Tyrese Hall is available for loan before the summer transfer deadline on Friday, should the right club come forward with a guarantee of minutes. And that is a key thing when it comes to Spurs releasing these players on loan now. Unless they're going to get guaranteed minutes, they will not allow a club to take them. And I think that's another good example of Spurs' recruitment policy and loan policy working out in terms of getting these young players who we believe in and giving them a real chance to make it in senior football. Some other Tottenham news now. Midfielder Rodrigo Bentancur has been handed a 4-match international ban. He'll miss all of those games for Uruguay, of course. That is after the clash that he had with Colombian fans during the Copa America. He's also been fined $16,000. I think the good thing there is that he hasn't been banned from any Premier League games or club games. But I'm sure he'll regret those actions in the Copa America there. Spurs midfielder Lucas Bergvall has been called up to the senior Swedish national team. Well done, Lucas. And Dejan Kulusevski will be going with him and as captain. He will be captaining the side for the first time. Well done, Deki Kulusevski. Meanwhile, Yang Min-hyuk, our new South Korean player who's coming in December and January, he was asked the question, who will you have the best chemistry with on the pitch for Tottenham Hotspur, do you think? And he said the following. He said, maybe James Maddison. He's a great passer. So, exciting times. Yang Min-hyuk, yet another exciting, dribbly, wide player. If we were going to have him on one side and Wilson Odobert on the other in some games, we would be very, very dangerous going forward. And not a lot of opposition teams would want to face that. So that could be very exciting, although I do think it'll take some time for Yang Min-hyuk to bed in. Guys, before I get on to some more wide-ranging Premier League transfer news, once again, please do press that like button. Please do subscribe if you're not already. I want to get to that 11,000 subscribers mark and become a member. Really helps me make this daily transfer news and Spurs news for you. All the details in the description box below. But yes, getting on to Premier League transfer news with only 1 day left, or just over 1 day left of the transfer window. Juventus had agreed a loan deal for Jadon Sancho with Manchester United. However, Since then, Sancho has made it clear that he's keen to join Chelsea, but Chelsea only want him if Man United will take Raheem Sterling off them. Juventus are still there for Sancho, though, waiting to see if it can all come through to them. And obviously, Chiesa, having moved to Liverpool, Federico Chiesa, that is, might well help in terms of getting Sancho to Juventus because there is a space there now. Meanwhile, Man United and Napoli have signed all of the paperwork for Scott McTominay to move to Napoli under Antonio Conte. He'll be in Italy today to sign that deal, 30 million euros plus 10% sell-on clause. Meanwhile, back at Chelsea, their efforts to get Victor Osimhen in are ongoing. Direct talks between Osimhen and Chelsea are happening today. The Al Ahly in Saudi Arabia deal, though, remains on the table and will be activated if Chelsea can't agree a deal with Napoli and Osimhen. A possible plan B for Chelsea, apparently? Ivan Toney, that player who we all know is for sale from Brentford, not playing in Brentford's first team at the moment. Could he end up at Stamford Bridge? I mean, is it possible that Chelsea don't ever go for a player? If there's a player on the market, all you know is that Chelsea will try and buy him at some point. Speaking of which, they have Thomas Araujo on their shortlist in case another defender leaves in the coming days. No bid at this stage, but Araujo is really appreciated by the club. Paris Saint-Germain also want him. That is in case Milan Skriniar accepts a deal to move to Saudi Arabia. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, Chelsea are facing a challenge to comply with UEFA's financial fair play rules. That is after the European governing body confirmed that it does not allow clubs to register income from selling assets to sister companies. And in terms of European football, that could leave Chelsea absolutely screwed. Because as I'm sure you know, Chelsea have sold their hotels or their hotel to a sister company, their training ground, parts of their training ground to a sister company, and their women's team to a sister company, all in an attempt to get around profit and sustainability rules and financial fair play. And look, not just because I don't like Chelsea as a club, but it is just shocking. It should not be possible that a club is allowed to sell its own assets, in essence, to itself. And I'm really hopeful that UEFA are, calling Chelsea up on this, and hopefully at some point the Premier League will do the same. Over to Everton now. They're closing on a deal for Auriel Mangala to join on loan with a buy option clause from Olympique Lyonnais. The player has already accepted personal terms. Meanwhile, Everton also apparently wanted Maxence Caqueret, 24-year-old from Lyon. However, the midfielder did not even respond to the approach. So that shows Everton still trying to make things happen, but not always getting positive responses. Over to Brighton and a player who was really highly rated just a year or so ago, but then had a bad injury. I'm talking about fullback Tariq Lamptey. He could move before the transfer deadline tomorrow now. It's understood that he'd be allowed to leave if the correct offer came in, and that a loan would also be considered as long as it contained an obligation to turn into a permanent deal. So Lamptey, who was on Spurs' list for a while, really highly rated fullback, but just hasn't recovered from injury, and Brighton now willing to let him go as a result. Over at Wolves, they have agreed a deal to sign Sam Johnson from Crystal Palace for £10 million. That's a pretty good deal for an England international goalkeeper. Speaking of England international goalkeepers, over to South London and Arsenal, where they will receive an £18 million fee from Southampton for Aaron Ramsdale, plus £1 million if Southampton remain in the Premier League. There are also £6 million in add-ons linked to Ramsdale's performances. He'll be travelling for a medical today. And finally, I mentioned just yesterday, the day before, that Kingsley Coman should be a player that Spurs are looking at. Well, apparently South London's Arsenal are also exploring a potential move for the Bayern Munich international player, Kingsley Coman. I wonder if he will be coming to the Premier League sometime in the next 36 hours. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please do press that like button. Please do subscribe. Become a member. I really appreciate it. And I'll be back with another video on transfer deadline day tomorrow, hopefully, talking about some big Spurs moves. Have a great rest of your day. Cheers.